Yes, I would like to start my oral presentation of the curious incident of the dog in the night time. Well, now, so first off, I would like to come up with my own reasons to why I like this particular novel. So the first off is obviously the premise. I believe it is so original. I have scarcely seen anything like this in any sort of storytelling. Well, not in English anyway, but the whole premise of this boy who really do not understand the world and the world not understanding him, and this like yin and yang are likely scenery is like such a great thing to see. I've never seen anything like this in this caliber anyway, and also how fluid it ought to be. With all, even though it has flashbacks and relations and setup and payoff, it is way more fluid than it ought to be, and it it feels so chronological, even though technically it's not in terms of the narration of the story. And also a note, I reckon not many people can supply with perspective, but I seldom can picture a story as good as this. I could see so much of it upon my head and inside it just when I read it. I loved it. Secondly, the characters just are great. The way they are explained and the way they're giving you such a three-dimensional characterization in this story is just marvelous. Just for that I've written some points that really makes him such a great character. The way he's lovable and worthy of hate at the same time. You know how he kills a dog and he lies of it, and he puts everything in his life on hold for his son. He lies about his mother and tries to protect his son. All the things he does, all the wrongs he does it for the love he holds for his own son. It's just amazing to see how he has to live with his own mistakes and how he tries um, to reason with his son, and how he tries to redeem himself for the things he did. And the mother too is she's so understandable for her actions, why she left the father and Christopher. The thing that she really couldn't bear to stay with them, and all the reasons she had for them, like whenever Christopher couldn't understand his own mother because of things Christopher had to deal with, and how the mother had to embarrass herself in public. She um, she really was going mental. See what I did there by staying there, but she still writes to him every week, and she has um, and she have this motherly need us to supply him with every need that Christopher has, even when she haven't seen him in a lot of time. And Christopher himself, the way he just diagnose, and even though it doesn't justify everything it does, it explains it so perfectly, I believe. And the way his own life is like very much yin and yang, like he's unpredictable around people, and I believe that comes from a severe lack of communication. He really do not understand what people mean, but what they're saying and the expressions, because he has a whole other persuasion of how the world works. And these are always just the main characters. Not to mention about the every other characters, you know, like the policeman and Mr. and Mrs. Shears. It really is great characterization. And the third thing is the dialogue, and I thought it was immense. The usage of subtext, and the subtext is how I've understood it. It's like the highest point of dialogue. You know, basically you write two conversation at once, and while these two conversations are happening, there is the explicit conversation, that is the conversation conversation. Sorry, that is wordly spoken and explicitly spoken, and the implicit where all the meaning lies behind. And and the way it is used in this story is just awesome. Just to say it, like It presents the plot pertinent. It explains everything we need to know upon the story. Most of the dialogue we don't even need to read half of the story to understand what is happening, because of all the information that is just spit out in form of just completely normal dialogue, and the way it highlights the traits of the speaker, even though they're in the story, Christopher explains who said it, if it was Christopher himself or the person he was talking to. He always tells who it was, but it isn't really necessary because of the traits that the speaker has. And then the way Christopher controls the conversation, even though he isn't aware of it, he does control it more or less by the way he speaks and persuade the world. And I would actually like to read a dialogue from the novel to show what I mean. And I have written down here in green, yellow, and red just to show the dialogues. And I come back to that exactly what I mean. So, the policewoman put her arms around Mrs. Shears and led her back towards the house. I lifted my head off the grass. The policeman squatted down beside me and said, "Would you like to tell me what's going on here, young man?" I sat up and said, "The dog is dead." "I got that so far," he said. I said, "I think someone killed the dog." "How old are you?" he asked. I replied, "I am 15 years and 3 months and 2 days." "And what precisely where were you doing in the garden?" he asked. "I was holding the dog," I replied. "And why were you holding the dog?" he asked. This was a difficult question. It was something I wanted to do. I like dogs. It made me sad to see the dog was dead. I like policemen too, and I wanted to answer the question properly. But the policeman did not give me enough time to work out the correct answer. "Why were you holding the dog?" he asked again. "I like dogs," I said. "Did you kill the dog?" he said. "I did not kill the dog." "Is this your fork?" he said. "No." "You seem very upset about this," he said. Now, just first off, I have marked these in 3 parameters: the introduction, the middle, and the ending. In the introduction, we learn about that the dog is dead. We learn about that it was probably Mrs. Shears, since she was clearly in a state of her mind where she needed a policewoman to take her arm around her. Something has happened between Christopher and the policeman, since he has his head in the grass, and the policeman tries to work out exactly what's happened. And the way he asks, "Would you like to tell me what's going on here, young man?" It's clear to see in the policeman's mind, he already has made up in his mind that it probably was something like Christopher who killed the dog, or even something like that. And that is what we see around here. Just and especially the way Christopher controls the conversation. He basically controls it by these small answers that he gives the policeman, that the policeman ought to follow. And that's also what we see here in the middle part. In the middle part, we are again just overflowing with all this information that really explains a lot of the story narrative. We see all the reason that the story has its name. We see exactly what Christopher has going on in his mind, and what kind of person he is, and basically what he suffers from this diagnosis that he has. Now, and especially in the ending, we see that the policeman is getting more and more furious with Christopher, and how he barely trusts him, and he and probably something like that. He seldom would trust a person like him, especially under these circumstances that he found Christopher in. And that is just the severe part of dialogue. That there are this like under the dialogue onto the explicit dialogue. There are basically 2 conversations within this conversation, and it's just so fluid and awesome. Thank you.